Okay, so we're going to have a walkthrough of networks, task forces, and communities of practice. I have left out teams just for the sake of simplicity, um, but they are also integral to how this all works. So it all starts with an individual. Forgive the abstract nature of the individual in this case, but it is for simplicity. And then there's a second person, and they have a relationship, and they have a shared lived experience, and that makes them peers. 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 Then a few more people come into the experience, and several more. These are all peers, identifying each other as we see, and then informal relationships start to build between their various peers. Not all of them know each other. Several people know more than one person, etc., etc. And a web, an informal peer network starts to emerge. Now, with the East London SendNet, we use a model of association called Enable, which is empathic, non-judgmental, active, boundaried listening. And the coloured line represents the peers that have been introduced to this and are part of the East London SendNet peer support network. So they're using the Enable principles in order to interact with each other. So we can see that we are slowly building up the peer support network out of the peer network, but naturally, as is the way with things, not everybody is part of the peer support network. So informal peer relationships still also exist. And now we see the start of a team um, or task force, although they are two distinct features starting to emerge. And this is, for example, um, a um, a program we're working on called Early Positive Approaches to Support with the University of Kent, MENCAP, the Newham Send Hub, and various children's centres in Newham. So we then essentially pull the connections of the network members taut. So their Slack relationships, and you pull them taut and you create a team from this. So it's very simple. You just draw on a network and you create a team. And then when that program ends, then the relationships go slack again when they aren't operating as a team. This could be during the summer holidays, for example, when not much activity occurs to parent carers around operational code delivery because we're looking after our children. And then more peers start to come into the experience. Informal networks, connections start to be formed again, and then they get assumed by the network. They are introduced to the enable model. The expectation is there for them to um, interface with network members further this way to support each other, and they become part of the East London SendNet peer support network. There we can see another uh, network team emerging. So we had the EPATs happen, and that's gone slack. But then another opportunity arises, and a different set of network members may get involved in this. So we can see that the connectivity is starting to occur, and where people weren't necessarily connected before, when they are formed into a team, then they become all connected to each other through the collaboration. And then once again, when that activity is over, it all goes slack again. But then connections still remain and there's still a aspect of peer support in the background, even though the team isn't necessarily active. And then the EPATS team, when they come back after the summer holidays, for example, will then come back. The connections are drawn taut again, and they deliver some projects. More peers come into the experience. Connections are formed informally, and then the team goes Slack. Connections are created with the enable model, and we can see now. So what we've seen so far is an individual, and then when more than one individual with the same lived experience comes into the picture, they become peers, and then they form peer networks, which are normally informal connections. And then with the coloured lines, we've seen that they are integrated into the peer support network through ongoing participation in emotional support. And then from there, even though there's still Slack, teams can emerge where the connections are pulled taut and then they go relaxed and etc. So that's just an ongoing aspect over a durational period of time. But then when we pull all of the connections together, we pull them all tight, then we form a community of practice. So this is something that can happen over a let's say once a term, so once every 12 weeks, or it could happen every month, or it could just be once a year, where we pull all of the network members together, create a community of practice where we meet up, and then we can use certain liberating structures, and I haven't worked into that yet, but that's how we could facilitate we could elicit certain ideas from the community using the syntax of facilitation that the liberating structures guys have developed. Okay, so that's the basic idea. I hope it's fairly pretty. I do like colours. Thank you very much.